Western civilization is moving closer to a point of irreconcilable, unstable equilibrium, as frighteningly increasing numbers of people trust nothing. Media, academia, and especially the governments are no longer held in high esteem. Regaining trust is often impossible after betrayal. However, transparency is essential to any healing process, and that is the essence of the Don Sullivan Show. Please listen to the team explore, probe, and debate cutting-edge science, technology, and computing. Play ball!
Welcome to a very special episode of the Don Sullivan Show. As you can hear, Don is currently on the road, and you're going to learn more about that very shortly. I'm your co-host, Jersey Steve. First, we want to thank our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by License Fortress, the industry's first and only software asset management firm to offer both a financial and legal guarantee at its highest level of service. Whether it's Oracle, Microsoft, or VMware, License Fortress helps organizations stay compliant, avoid audits, and save money. You can learn more at licensefortress.com. And please support our producer, our wonderful producer, Bill Axt, by visiting axtinc.com. That is AXTINK.com. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel and help support his efforts to create humorous animation, as well as run our website, all while researching a cure for baldness.
Hello, folks. This is Don again from the Don Sullivan Show, and this week we're going to have something a little bit different, but for the most part the same. I'm on a cruise ship. I'm on a cruise ship again, and we are going down through the Caribbean. And we're going to go to a bunch of random islands in the Caribbean, and so I thought today would be fun to talk about the archipelago of the Caribbean islands and the sea underneath them, and some other aspects of the geology that makes up the ocean floor, including the famous doldrums and other aspects of the Caribbean. We won't talk about the pirates too much, and we'll leave Johnny Depp out, but we're going to have some interesting discussion, maybe a couple of interviews with people on the ship. Not too much about ships themselves on this particular episode, but I think considering and talking about the geology and the oceanography and the very fact that it's actually warm down here when up in my hometown in Denver, where we usually do these particular broadcasts from of the Don Sullivan Show, that it was 15 degrees and icy cold to the point where my poor little rescue dog's feet were too cold to actually take a walk, which made it kind of dangerous for the rug inside my house, so I had to get him out a little bit. So, of course, as good dog parents, what we decided to do was fly down and take a cruise into the Caribbean. And we left out of Fort Lauderdale yesterday, and so we're in the ocean, or in the sea, Caribbean Sea. That's technically part of the Atlantic Ocean in some ways. But we will be talking over the course of the next week about everything having to do with the Caribbean. So as we move along, day in and day out, we'll have different segments and we'll have a lot of fun. It'll be lots of interesting stuff we will discover and learn together about the Caribbean Sea and how it was put together and how all the different crazy things that happen in the Caribbean Sea, including, as I said, the archipelago, as well as the hurricanes flowing up through here, and why they seem to ignore Barbados and destroy Jamaica at the same time. So I will see you for tonight, but we'll be back with the next segment tomorrow. Well, hello again, folks, and here I am somewhere north of the island of Antigua in the city of St. John's, Antigua, which I'll be in tomorrow. We'll do a little hike down on that particular island tomorrow, and I'll talk to you about that then. But today, I think it makes most sense to talk about geology in general, since the Caribbean area, both the Caribbean Sea as part of the Atlantic Ocean, in some respects, although in greater respect, there really is only one world ocean. We break up into the 6, I guess, or 5 major oceans. But the Caribbean geology is absolutely fascinating in the way so many different components of the world's puzzle of tectonic plates actually come together to form the archipelagos that we know of as the Lower and Greater Antilles. Western civilization, antiquity, at least 250 years ago, also known as the West Indies, how the various different meteorological effects which start in the areas near Nigeria in Africa move via the trade winds, the same winds that allowed the Spanish to move most of their pilfered gold up into the Empire of Spain. But in the case of the major storms that develop off the coast of Africa, become hurricanes and sweep up into North America and through these poor islands that are very, very vulnerable, typically vulnerable, usually hitting the middle northern Antilles, but leaving islands like Barbados and the lower Antilles, and certainly the ABC Islands, which are really not part of the Caribbean. They're part of South America, that is Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, completely alone, but Barbados as well. So it's pretty amazing how consistent that is. And of course, as we know that these hurricanes come at different rates. Some years have many of them, some years have fewer. In recent years, certainly since 2005, there have been less and less major hurricanes for whatever reasons, despite the fact that the overall ocean temperatures are increasing. So there's an incredibly complex system from a meteorological perspective. But again, as usual, I digress. My intention here at the moment is to talk about geology in general. And I don't think we've been on this particular show or anywhere in the Don Sullivan Show in the World Geology or Tectonic Plate series ever really talked about how the tectonic plates work and how they move back and forth, causing all the various different geological phenomena that we see on Earth. And I'm not going to go through it all because that would require people obviously that have PhDs and spend a lifetime studying it. Scientists have been studying tectonic movements for hundreds and hundreds of years, but to suffice it to say that the Earth's crust is generally about 30 miles thick, and that once you get down into the lithosphere, which is a thin little layer, and then below that into the asthenosphere, but as usual, I'm getting too much into the weeds. So suffice it to say, we have a crust that is generally 30 to 50 miles thick, and below it is the mantle with a huge amount of what is effectively magma. Places like Yellowstone or Middle Atlantic Ridge, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or in the middle of the Pacific, certainly down in the Mariana Trench area near Indonesia. There, the crust of the Earth is thinner, particularly in Yellowstone. It can be as thin as 15 miles. We've done a number of different episodes on Yellowstone. We're going to talk about the geology of Yellowstone as follow-ups to the geology series here. But suffice it to say, we've got a number of major plates and a number of minor plates. We, of course, have the North American and South American plates, the African plate, the Eurasian plate, which is interesting. That even though we colloquially and geographically refer to Europe and Asia as different continents, they are certainly not from a geological perspective. It's the Eurasian continent. But even in between, we have smaller plates. we'll have an entire episode on the Juan de Fuca Plate, which leads to the Cascadia subduction zone up in the Pacific Northwest from Alaska all the way down to northern California, and the possible catastrophes that occur and have occurred every 300 years in that area. And one of my favorites before we get into talking about the Caribbean Plate, or the confluence of plates that make up that particular small minor plate, is what happens at the top of Africa, the African Plate, which interacts with the Arabian Plate, and it results in a whole mess of different strange geological effects under the Mediterranean Sea. And one of them, interestingly enough, is the simple fact that the island of Sicily, with Mount Etna and so on, and the ethnicity of Sicilians, they'll tell you that, as being part of the country of Italy, is actually part of the African Plate, as opposed to the Eurasian Plate. So that I find incredibly interesting, and it certainly leads to a number of different discussions on its own. For those of you who are interested, let me digress for a single moment. The India and Sri Lanka are considered part of a subcontinent of Eurasia, the Indian subcontinent, and the Indian Plate, again being a smaller plate that comprises the Indian Ocean, is moving northward and subducting underneath the Asian Plate, creating the ever-increasing Himalaya Mountains. Whereas in the western part of the United States, the Pacific Plate is subducting, the Juan de Fuca Plate that I just mentioned aside, underneath the North American Plate, which has created over the last 15 million years the Rocky Mountains. And those Rocky Mountains go all the way from the middle of Mexico down all the way up into Alaska. And they, of course, are lots and lots of different ranges that comprise the continental range of the Rocky Mountains. None of them are growing in the United States except for the Tetons, which is a great national park just south of Yellowstone National Park, which again we'll have a totally separate episode on that. This is the second version, geohistorically speaking. There was the ancestral Rocky Mountains from, I'll have to look that up, but I believe it was in the 300 million year ago range. But this version of the Rocky Mountains was in the was created about 15 million years ago. And as a result of the subduction, as I've mentioned in other episodes, of the Pacific Plate underneath the North American Plate, creating the Colorado Plateau, creating the Rocky Mountains, and creating things like the Grand Canyon, which you all had the pleasure of listening to me huff and puff and walk up and down a couple of months ago. All right, so let's get back to the Caribbean and the Caribbean Plate and what actually happens there. It is an actual plate. In tectonic speak, or geological tectonic speak, there are two other plates that are, again, seems to be more subplates of or minor plates that are adjacent to the South American Plate. The Caribbean Plate in the north, the Cocos Plate that goes into the lower part of the Gulf of America, the Naja Plate, which is very much off the coast of the entirety of South America, again resulting in massive earthquakes that you see in Chile, the 9+ earthquakes. The Socha Plate, that is sits between, or really between the bottom of South America off of Cape Horn and the peninsula coming off of the continent of Alaska, right through what some of you may have traversed at some point. I have traversed it on a cruise ship, the the famous Drake Passage around the coast and Cape Horn of South America. But that's just for background purposes. The Caribbean plate itself comprises pretty much everything we know of that's part of the Caribbean and not. As I mentioned a little bit before, the islands of Aruba, ABC Islands of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao are actually part of South America more than the Caribbean, even though they're certainly considered Caribbean islands in the colloquial sense. But you go all the way up with the Caribbean plate to above Cuba, above Jamaica, right to the edge of Key West and that little archipelago that is referred to as the Florida Keys. So as I mentioned, the Caribbean itself is incredibly complex. There's so much that's really going on. There's a small Caribbean plate which interacts with both in terms of subduction and just plain collision, as well as slipping past the North American, South American, and the smaller plates that I mentioned a minute ago. And it creates these volcanic islands, not in the same way as what we know as the famous Ring of Fire, which again we'll have a separate show on that. It shows all around the periphery, 10,000 miles of the Pacific Ocean from the bottom of South America up to Alaska, down through Indonesia, creating all of those geological effects, including things like the supervolcanoes of Toba and others, and the great volcanoes of Krakatoa and so on. But again, I don't mean to digress, but there's so much to this overall concept. And again, we'll get to that in other episodes. But there are many different fault systems throughout the Caribbean. And they happen in both what's called the Lesser and the Greater, or the Northern and Southern Antilles. The northern, of course, being Cuba and Hispaniola, which is the Dominican Republic and Haiti, as well as Jamaica and Puerto Rico. Tectonically complex zones, what they refer to as the Cayman Trough, and other areas of extreme seismic activity. I think you don't think of the Caribbean as having a huge number of volcanoes, but if you ever get a chance and you're on a Caribbean cruise, and you come anywhere near the island of Montserrat, such as if you have a stopover in St. Martin, you might have the opportunity to take a helicopter ride. You can't go to the island itself of Montserrat, but it's utterly mesmerizing looking at the destruction that the volcanoes of Montserrat have actually caused onto that island. So they definitely are, although sporadic and sort of spread out in a way that's a little bit difficult unless you're a geologist to actually detect the pattern, but they are definitely volcanic. The actual formation began with the breakup of Pangaea about the time of during the ages of the Mesozoic age, during the time of the dinosaurs. So without getting too much into an actual geology class on an undergraduate or graduate level, it's fascinating to just go look it up yourself, see that all of these plates that are, again, sitting on the crust of the Earth, moving back and forth, moving in different directions, some eastward, some northward, some subducting, some just colliding, such as the Indian subcontinent colliding into the Eurasian continent, and the various different effects that they cause. And this has all really, again, been happening since that breakup of that single supercontinent known as Pangea during the Mesozoic era. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background of the again, fascinating stuff is a technical term, of course, that happens underneath the sea here, and it all has the aura of an incredibly peaceful, simple, beautiful area. The ocean is so smooth for the most part. Of course, you're not here during hurricane season, which is between June and December 1st, but it obviously hits its peak in the August and September timeframe. I will be back tomorrow, and I will speak to you from the island of Antigua. We had a little hike along the beach there, talk about some of the various different features and the things that I see that I will share with you. Steve will have plenty of comments along those lines. And as we continue during the week, we'll discuss the various different meteorological effects that occur on some of these islands. Antigua is a particular island that has had recent massive destruction due to hurricanes. It's also an island that is frequented and an island is preferred by many mega celebrities. I know Oprah has a home here, or Clapton does. I believe the Versace family does as well. But Eric Clapton has his famous rehab facility called Crossroads down here as well. It's actually small enough and very easy to take a boat ride all around Antigua. A few of the surrounding islands are actually part of this separate country. It is one of the interesting aspects of the way the Caribbean developed politically. Those countries, or those islands that were not part of the American conquest of the previous Spanish Empire, that is Puerto Rico in particular, mostly became independent. Some of them were French, like Haiti. Some of them were Spanish, such as Dominican Republic on the same island of Hispaniola. Some of them were part of the British Empire, chose to remain part of the Commonwealth, and chose to become independent, such as Caymans are an interesting example of that. Grand Cayman in particular. It is a British overseas territory that is obviously a banking haven of one kind or another. We'll sort of leave it to your imagination and research to discover that, but it is an amazing place to visit, at least for once in one day, particularly on a ship. And many of these ships, hundreds, are left out of Fort Lauderdale, and there were 8 ships lined up and ready to come down on this one particular day that we left from different companies. But that'll be it for today, and we will get back to you tomorrow. I'm sure Steve will have a bunch of comments, and I will talk to you as we are hiking along the wonderful little beach in Antigua. We'll be in some other islands, some other separate countries, and I'll even mention some of the different political ramifications of some of those countries. Some of them are amazingly complex. But for now, we'll talk to you tomorrow, and we'll have some more scientific, meteorological, and observational commentary then. So see you for now. Well, good morning, everyone. Here we are in the incredibly beautiful island of Antigua, of the nation of Antigua and Barbuda, which got its independence from the British Empire in 1981, and is still part of the Commonwealth. 2 islands, one major one smaller one. The tourist island is Antigua, as I mentioned to you yesterday. Weather here is absolutely incredible. Always is. Of course, you all listen to my episode from the northern part of Colombia a few weeks ago, and even though the humidity here is quite intense, it's not even close to what it was down there in Colombia. This is sort of in the middle of the Caribbean Sea in that Greater Antilles archipelago volcanic that I mentioned yesterday in yesterday's segment. Unfortunately, this beautiful island with all of its celebrity holdings and mansions and so on, despite the fact that it has some of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen this side of the continent from Hawaii, it has a tendency once every 5 to 10 years or so of getting absolutely hammered by one hurricane or another. But they're very resilient people in a resilient environment and expect that to happen. We just got finished with about a 3-mile hike through what is really a rainforest, although this island is generally dry in terms of rain. It did rain on us. And it is considered to be a tropical rainforest in there, at least that's what they tell me. Off into a beach in a secluded cove with a hotel on it, about 30 miles from St. John, the capital of Antigua Barbuda nation. It is very interesting that one of the business issues that has been long prevalent with the cruise ships is that when they have excursions such as this and they contract with local companies and local talent to act as the guides, they neglect certain aspects of reality of cruise ship passengers, and quite often they just simply don't vet people. And when you get people who are either too old or just not physically fit enough to actually do some of these trails, which have on them either muddy or slippery or steep or just dangerous areas in general, even if they're relatively small, that always causes interesting situations. Fortunately, nobody got badly hurt today. A couple of people did fall and got themselves cut up, but that's something that any of you potential cruise passengers might want to evaluate yourself, because the cruise ships in general, and I think it's true with all of them, really don't warn the potential attendees of these various different strenuous, as they put them, excursions. They really should vet people better. But it's an incredible place. Beautiful, like most of these islands are. Very, very peaceful. And just wanted to touch in with you today, give you some information on this particular island. We'll be on to a few others in the next couple of days, and I'll be back with you then to give you a report from those islands. We'll see how they are. So for now, see ya, and we'll be back soon. Hi folks, it's Don back this morning, and I'm on the beautiful island of St. Martin, for lack of a better way of referring to it with my New Jersey and American English dialect. It's a very interesting, beautiful little 37 square mile island that is subject to the same volcanic implications and ramifications from the nearby islands that we talked about yesterday, but also it gets hit quite often with major hurricanes. I think it was Hurricane Irma in 2017 that did enormous amounts of damage here. But it can't go by without talking about the strange political configuration of this island. So you have St. Martin, or San Martin, which is spelled SINT-MAARTEN, which is the Dutch or island, or part of the island, which is a member state of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and then the French side of the island, Saint Martin, which is an overseas territory of France. So neither one of them are independent. It doesn't seem to be totally independent. They function on their own. Strangely enough, the islands surrounding of Anguilla, across the ocean or across the sea about 20 miles, is a British territory. And when there is a fear of a hurricane or some other natural disaster, it seems to be that all of the various different European factions of civil authority, the Dutch, that is the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the French, and the United Kingdom, all come in here to help. So much for the Monroe Doctrine here, at least. But it's very interesting. It's very, very peaceful. It's beautiful, beautiful beaches, amazing overall place. Went on a couple-mile hike up a sort of rocky hillside today. Nothing terribly interesting otherwise, but had to report in today from, again, this another little amazing island here in the middle part of the Caribbean. Actually, I'm not even sure if this is the Lesser or the Greater Antilles. It's kind of in the in-between area. But I will be getting back on and speaking to you from Hispaniola next time, as well as we're going to be stopping in Puerto Rico. I won't talk to you much there, but we will talk. I will describe to you what we do in Hispaniola. That is the Dominican Republic. And we will talk about a lot more than American baseball shortstops or baseball shortstops, especially with the World Baseball Classic coming up. It's very possible the Dominican Republic has the best team in the world. We will see come March. I will have lots to say on other episodes of the Don Sullivan Show about the World Baseball Classic in March. So, all right, I digress again, but we'll be back tomorrow. And until then, see ya. Well, folks, here I am back, and today we're in the amazing, beautiful island of Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, and Haiti are the two countries that make up this island. And going up into the mountains, to the center, to a incredible river that I've seen the pictures of. We're not there yet. The river Sundar, to do some swimming and some hiking up in there. It's just utterly amazing how many places there are through the Caribbean, how many islands, dozens of them, that obviously have their own personality, their own geography, their own geology, their own meteorology in terms of how the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean hit them as the Gulf Stream flows through all of that area. But looking around here, the weather's perfect. The humidity is high, but it's nothing compared to how it was in Colombia. And I just simply recommend to everybody that you take a cruise, you do some other travel yourself when you can, and island hop down here to as many of these islands as possible, because right now we're driving up on a mountain road 10 miles from Puerto Plata, or the city in which the cruise ships dock. Santo Domingo is the capital, but in the center. So we're 10 miles into the island, and we're up in the mountains. We're going to go up to about 1,200 meters, almost 4,000 feet, into what is really a mountain climate, but jungle mountain climate. In that way, it's similar to the coast of Colombia and the coast of the northern coast of South America, but without the tremendous humidity. And that, of course, comes from the various different trade winds that come through, properly circulating all the humidity itself. It, I guess, has the negative effect of all of these islands at this point in latitude getting hit pretty hard by various hurricanes about once every 5 to 10 years. And then again, as we mentioned in previous segments of this particular episode, that there is an enormous amount of geological activity as well, volcanological, I should say. But it's a wonderful place. Obviously, from a perspective of sports and baseball, this is such a theme of the Don Sullivan Show. The Dominican Republic is one of the greatest sources of great baseball players around the world outside the United States, particularly shortstops, players such as the great Pedro Martinez and Big Papi David Ortiz. It's amazing how many people call each other Papi down here, but Big Papi David Ortiz, both from the villainous 2004 Boston Red Sox. I say that as the Yankee fan, Yankee person that I am. But obviously great players. Personally, I think Pedro had the 5 best years, or the stretch of five years, better than any pitcher of starting pitcher of my lifetime. Seaver had the best overall career, but Pedro had the best 5 years. Mariano always has the best 5 minutes, which closes out the most important games. But I digress. I always digress as we're driving up towards this river. And again, I've seen these beautiful pictures of it coming down from the mountain. So we'll do a little bit of swimming up there, have some local cuisine, come back down, and then spend another day at sea, getting back to Florida to fly back to Colorado. Got a lot of Don Sullivan shows lined up, but I just couldn't pass up the opportunity, being on another cruise ship and going down into the islands in the Caribbean, to talk about it as much as possible. Talk about the experience, talk about the meteorology, the geology, all the science that's packed in with everything in this area of the world. They obviously could get into other parts of the discussion, how and why the conquerors of the New World found it so valuable to be here, and how the economy of the pirates came along to challenge that, and may or may not have historically led to the sentiment which led to the revolution in the colonies and the formation of the United States and so on. But that's for a different show and a different theme. Here I just wanted to talk about the overall science of what it's like down here in the Caribbean this time in the November, December timeframe after hurricane season. And again, on the cruise ships. Hopefully we will, the Admiral Admiral Pat, who was on an earlier episode with us, has promised to get me connected with some executives from the various different cruise lines, and hopefully we'll be able to have them on to talk about some of the more nuanced and powerful, technologically triumphant aspects of the major cruise ships, but not going to advertise for any of them at the moment, so I wind up taking a lot of different cruise lines. But in particular, I spend a lot of time, more time than any, on the various different brands of Royal Caribbean. But at some point, Royal Caribbean, you can certainly be a sponsor of the Don Sullivan Show, and hope you will. And in particular, the celebrity brand within Royal Caribbean. But for now, we're going to sign out. I may get a chance to fill out some last minute details tomorrow when we get off the ship. And until then, we will see you. And good night. So it's the last day, and we're getting up really early. I always do. It's one of the roughest days of any type of vacation, getting off a cruise ship, because all the fun has stopped. There's still breakfast available, but the crew and the ship itself just wants everybody to get off and get out of there, because they need everybody off by about 11 a.m. so they can start boarding the next group for the next cruise that they're going to have, and they'll all be on and start the whole process all over again, probably by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and even even a little bit later than that. They'll have the whole ship ready to go, and by 5 o'clock they'll be out cruising around again wherever they plan on going in the next cruise. But we got to get off now. We got to get off the ship and get to the airport and fly back to Colorado. We've got a great lineup for you over the next few weeks. We're going to have a very interesting discussion on creation science. We'll talk about how much of that really is a science and how much it's not. We have some return guests that are coming back. We're going to have a couple of panel discussions on AI ethics. We're going to have a broadened view of, which we do here naturally anyway on the Don Sullivan Show. We have a broadened selection of different topics. We're going to have a dental practitioner, Dr. Elliot Rotot is going to be on, my dentist. We'll have him on. We'll have a number of other experts on in different subjects. We're going to have a pitching expert on to talk about what happens to arms when mechanics aren't correctly, when the mechanics are not executed correctly of throwing a pitch or throwing at all. We'll talk about the difference between throwing baseballs and footballs, and mostly we're going to talk about what happens when you throw curveballs and why kids shouldn't do that. And we're going to have an interesting debate about all of that. That's a subject that I've been passionate about for, I think, well over 50 years. Have some other medical discussions. We have some other computing discussions. We're going to have a whole episode and series on quantum computing to parallelize with our series on AI. We're going to have a whole series on meteorology and the science of climate change, if that's really a science. I think it's fair to call it a science, but we'll talk about how and why it actually happens, or what the various different scientists think is causing it. And we're going to have a lot of other episodes on a lot of other subjects as well. So as we move through the end of 2025, this incredibly successful year for the Don Sullivan Show, the first year, I want to thank all of the loyal listeners of the Don Sullivan Show. And we may have a few more episodes this year, but I still want to thank you all. And I'm going to finish up this episode by, saying again, if we are on cruise ships, if I'm in Colombia, if I'm on the top of a mountain, if we're going down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, if we're discussing, which we will, the architecture or the science of architecture, if we're discussing the various different aspects of where art meets engineering and beautiful, exquisite timepieces. We got a lot of episodes about that coming up too, and within that series. No matter what we are talking about, just remember one thing. Remember one thing that I think can be the basis of all of my life's philosophies. Just remember that all at-bats are situational. So, see you, folks.